Welcome to the Women's History Month Virtual Speaker Series presented by Black Speakers Network and the Speak Black Woman community. My name is Dr. Johnette Ruffner-Caesar. I am the founder and CEO of Liberated Expressions, LLC, which is a professional wellness agency where we teach mid to senior level career women how to obtain peace in their professional life through strategic career advising, resume support, and serene professional development workshops. And I am thrilled to be your host for today's session. You know, there is nothing like Women's History Month. It is an opportunity for us to celebrate the contributions and achievements of women we have seen in our history books, documentaries, movies, and television. It is also an opportunity for us to celebrate and express gratitude for the countless women who never experienced the spotlight. Like your grandmother, who was known in your neighborhood by the love and kindness she demonstrated to those in need. Like your mother, who was the first in your town to enter a male-dominated industry. Like you, who was the first in your family to start a business. By coming together in this way to learn, share, and celebrate, we can continue to build and promote a legacy of power, wisdom, excellence, and love that will fuel and guide the next generation of women. And for that, we should be thankful. You know, this series will feature some fantastic speakers who will share their knowledge and expertise on a wide range of topics. So I hope you're ready to be totally consumed by this experience. Before we get started, I need your help. As you know, audience participation enhances virtual experiences like this. So please take a moment to use the chat to shout out your city, state, where you work, your business. But also during each presentation, please share one takeaway or insight. We need your messages to create a warm community around this event. Well, that's it for now. I will be back at the end of the presentations. Are you ready? Let's get started.
If something makes you sad, you ought to do something about it. If something makes you sad, you ought to do something about it. For the past 10 years, I have worked to do something about domestic violence because it is very, very sad indeed. I first began trying to make a difference with domestic violence as a law student. I was working with a senior attorney and I was set to try my first case. It was a domestic violence case. And the facts were these. A woman, Jasmine, her boyfriend had taken her into the street and beat her in front of a crowd of witnesses. He stripped her naked and left her there. The police came and thankfully they arrested Jasmine's boyfriend. And it was going to be my job to try the case. I called Jasmine to the witness stand, and I felt like we had a very strong case. We had our witness, we had our victim, and the defendant was there in the courtroom. Jasmine took the witness stand, and as I began to question her, she stopped. She stared at her boyfriend, and she told me and everyone else in the courtroom how much she loved him and how she intended to marry him. The verdict that day was not guilty. I flew out of that courtroom, jumped into my car, and drove to the top deck of the parking garage. And I spent my lunch hour crying. If something makes you sad, you ought to do something about it. There is a crisis of domestic violence, particularly as it relates to Black women. And it is a crisis denied. Denied because we are not taking enough action to turn this tide. The what is the crisis of domestic violence. But we need to look at the why. And there are 5 whys behind the fact that domestic violence is an alarming crisis among Black women and among the Black community. Let's look at the 5 whys. The first why is that we ignore the fact that domestic violence is worse for Black women. The second why is this: we underestimate the impact of domestic violence on children. And you can't talk about Black women without considering Black children. The third why is this: we as a community refuse to hold abusers accountable. And the fourth why there is a crisis among Black women as it relates to domestic violence. The fourth reason is we don't see domestic violence as a public health issue. And lastly, the fifth why is that we fail to fund programs and properly advocate for victims and survivors of domestic violence. So let's take the first why. Domestic violence disproportionately impacts Black women. I want to tell you this: Black women are 2.5 times more likely to be killed by an intimate partner than white women. Think about that number: 2.5 times more likely to be killed by someone who is supposed to love them. 40% of Black women will experience domestic violence. 40%, almost half of Black women will experience domestic violence. 41% of Black women have experienced domestic violence. And 53% of Black women have suffered psychological abuse at the hands of an intimate partner. There is a crisis because we ignore that domestic violence disproportionately impacts Black women. Secondly, we underestimate the impact on children. When it comes to domestic violence, children who witness violence in the homes are more likely to either become abusers or to abuse someone. Children who witness domestic violence, they visit their primary care doctor more often. They have more trips to the emergency room. And there is a correlation, and this is important, there is a correlation between children witnessing violence in the home and suffering from chronic health issues later in life. Children who witness domestic violence are also more likely to become involved in criminal activity as they grow up. We underestimate what happens when children see domestic violence happening in the homes. And that's the second reason why it is such a crisis, because we're underestimating impact. The third why: we refuse to hold abusers accountable. Whenever I go into a courtroom and I'm about to try a domestic violence case, there is always a crowd of people there. And each time, I hope that those folks are there to support the victim. But that's never the case. It is always the abuser who has a crowd, a team of people supporting him. I have seen this over the years as the chief of domestic violence for the prosecuting unit in my jurisdiction. I work with the Special Victims Unit, and often I go into a courtroom and I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed because the support is for the people who have already hurt someone. And the people they've hurt, they're Black women. There is a crisis because as a community, we can accept that we know many victims of domestic violence. But what we don't like to acknowledge is this. We also have to know some people who are responsible for the abuse. And it becomes difficult to talk about accountability when the abuser is someone that you love. But it's absolutely necessary. We have to hold abusers accountable even when we know them, even when we love them. We don't see domestic violence as the public health crisis that it is. It is a public health issue because women who suffer from domestic violence are more likely to suffer from diabetes and high blood pressure. It is domestic violence, the number one health issue for Black women. We have to take this into account. We have to consider this. We fail to develop, to fund, and to advocate for programs that can truly change the lives of domestic abuse survivors. As a community, we owe our attention, we owe our public money, and we owe our voices to those who are suffering right in our communities. Domestic violence is the single greatest threat in every community, in every city across this nation. But together, we can turn the tide. I say again, if something makes you sad, you ought to do something about it.
There's a quote that says, if you are silent about your pain, they'll kill you and say you enjoyed it. This is a quote from Zora Neale Hurston that epitomizes the importance of sharing your story from your perspective and through your lens. There's another story that you might have heard about with an egg, a carrot, and a coffee bean. When boiled in hot water, the egg turns from liquid to hard-boiled. In life, there are people who, when things get hot, turn from having a heart of flesh into a heart of stone. It becomes hardened over time from trials, pain, and suffering. When a carrot is uncooked, you could tap it on the counter and it's kind of hard. But if you boil that same carrot in hot water for too long, it turns to mush. A person, like that carrot, can start out tough, but over time become silenced from staying in hot water too long. The last one is the coffee bean. And unlike the egg or the carrot, the coffee bean is the only one that, when placed in boiling water, does not change itself, but actually changes its environment. I have been all three. Life was hard. By the age of 22, I had been married, divorced, and was the mother of 2 sons. Fast forward a few years, I was remarried and now the mother of 5. A Black woman in an urban city with 5 children. Of course, that means that I was marginalized at multiple intersections, but I still completed my undergraduate degree by 23 years old. And it was primarily because I refused to accept someone else's narrative about me. Even with that degree in hand, I applied to 54 jobs and received 0 interviews after I decided to go back to work full-time when my children were in school all day. 54 jobs, 0 interviews. After 18 months of being unemployed, I accepted a temporary position in order to get my foot in the door. And sometimes that's what you have to do. Just take a job to get your foot in the door and demonstrate that you are a hard worker. Well, in excelling in that temporary position, what happened is I was actually able to get full-time employment, and I started working in higher education with students who were the very first in their families to graduate from college and enter into medical school. So yeah, I experienced some pain, I experienced some trials and some suffering, but even though it caused me to be hardened like that boiled egg, that was not the end. Then there's the hot mess. So sometimes those who you're supposed to be able to count on come through, and other times they don't step up. I became a caregiver for my father who had Parkinson's disease. I got a firsthand view of navigating healthcare from the perspective of the patient. I also, very shortly after that, became the caregiver for my mother who had dementia. So I learned about caring for people with different types of needs. I learned about the emotional, mental, and psychological concerns of daily living that people with different abilities have. But with little support, at some point in that journey, I silently accepted my role and just did what needed to be done. You can start out real tough, just like that carrot, but sometimes you end up being a little soft and mushy, and it is what it is. And then finally, today, I stand before you as that coffee bean, chocolate brown and a little round. My environment might have tried to change me before, but now I change the environment. I am the Vice President of Diversity and Community Engagement for the Detroit Zoological Society, and I'm also a National Diversity Council Certified Diversity Professional. Out of the egg, the carrot, and the coffee bean is the only one that is transformational, and that's what I want to share with you. You can take all of your experiences, change the environment, and go from being overlooked to being an overcomer. In this world, you want to show determination and resilience, and there are 3 ways that you can go from being overlooked to being an overcomer. The first one is to be intentional. It took me a minute to find my voice. It took me a minute to recognize my value and even to charge my worth. But now that I'm over the imposter syndrome, I don't have a problem showing others how to own their story, own even their mistakes, and empower others to go after the things that they want. For too long, I wanted to hide my personal struggles. I wanted to act like everything was okay. I didn't talk about the number of kids that I have. I didn't talk about how many times I've been married. I didn't talk about my non-traditional path to my current career. I first had to learn that all of the things that I experienced had value. Working in a multilingual classroom, teaching first-generation low-income students, and being a caregiver with hidden disabilities all contributed to my understanding of different types of diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, which is the foundation of the work that I do today. The second way is to be proactive. You don't have to wait until somebody Googles your name or finds some unflattering information about you or something that might even cause you shame and embarrassment. You don't have to wait until they ask questions in the interview about the gaps on your resume. You can be proactive. You can say, yes, I experienced this. Yes, I did that. It was an unfortunate situation, and I'm so glad that I'm wiser now. It's okay to talk about the adversity you've experienced and demonstrate how you can handle difficult situations and still come out on top. Others might determine your reputation, but you determine your character. And as a result of you determining your character, a character with integrity and honesty is a very valuable asset. So be proactive and let your character stand for itself. And number 3, be prepared. The questions will come. Others may even get offended by the implications in your story, but tell your truth anyway. There's even a saying in the African American community that says, what goes on in my house stays in my house. And that is the most toxic thing that a family member, especially a parent, could ever say. But guess what? You get to choose whether you want to go to therapy or not. You get to choose whether you want to go to counseling or not. You get to choose to get the healing that you need in order to be your best possible self. So ask yourself, would you rather be silent and miserable or vocal and free? Now, you might not tell all the secrets, but take care of you and get free. Now ask yourself, will you be the egg, the carrot, or the coffee bean? Whatever you decide, be your authentic self. Like that hot boiling water, adversity has the power to transform. Now, we've all experienced some type of adversity. It may not have been extended unemployment. It may not have been embarrassing childhood trauma. It might not have been any of those things, but we each have had our share of struggles. So think about what struggles you've had. Think about how you have navigated those situations and come out on the other side. Do you consider yourself stronger? Are you more resilient because of it? Will you allow that adversity that you experience to become the best part of your story to date? How will you allow those things to take you from being overlooked to being an overcomer? And finally, whenever you pass by a coffee shop or drink a cup of coffee, I want you to remember that you can be that coffee bean. I am Dr. DeAndrea Matthews, an international speaker and award-winning author. And I just want to let you know that just like in my story, I went from being overlooked to being an overcomer, you can do the same thing too. I love it if you would follow me on social media, and you could find me at Dr. DC Matthews on all of the social media channels. Again, that's Dr. DC Matthews, DrDCMatthews. I look forward to connecting. Thanks so much.
Greetings, everyone. I am GB Lynch. I'm a speaker, a host of the podcast GB Lynch, The Chronicles of Being Black in America. I am a business consultant with a focus on training and an author of the bestseller, We Are Still Supposed to Be Slaves, The Chronicles of Being Black in America. A cookbook, Soul Food's Road to Culinary Decadence, The Long Trip from Plantation Scraps to Celebrated Cuisine, and a co-author of the #1 national and #1 international bestseller, The Blueprint, Making Boss Moves. So ladies, it's Women's History Month. What an honor for us to be recognized. There's so much that women have contributed to the world. Many of us carry a lot on our shoulders. I know that often we are entrepreneurs, caretakers, students, and the blueprint and trendsetters of beauty. I know that often it's difficult to find time for yourself. And when you have so many people that depend on you, it's very challenging to make that conscious effort to have some me time, some self-care time. I know about booking appointments, having to reschedule, only to turn around and reschedule again. It can be challenging to get to yourself when others' needs are so important. I've been there. I get it. I went through that cycle for a while. For many years, I hung out in my shadow. I spent a lot of time wondering if I had what it takes to do this or to do that. I would always put myself last because I believe that that's what a good wife, a good friend, and any other hat that I had decided to wear was supposed to do. Living behind my shadow meant that I was behind the scenes. I also had to develop a thick skin that's required to be in the light. My shadow didn't require that I hear the opinions of others. Not that I can't take constructive criticism, but sometimes the delivery of that criticism can be cruel. This doesn't happen when you're in the shadows. Why? Because no one has an opinion about something that doesn't exist. There's no buzz, there's no chatter. I had dreams that I put on the back burner for years. I did not have the self-confidence that I needed to move forward. I needed to believe in myself and I didn't. Lacking that caused me to walk in a reactive reality instead of swimming in a proactive pond. And what I mean is that for me, the reactive reality was my response to negative feedback. I took that opinion to mean that I didn't have what it takes and should just move on to something else. I let that cripple me creatively for years. What I should have been doing is swimming in the proactive pond. I should have been proactive in working towards my dreams. I should have believed in myself and devised a plan. I should have taken steps towards the different ideas and projects that I had visions for. I should have been using that negative energy that I was receiving from others as my muse to keep going rather than utilizing it to quit. I stood in my own way and missed out on many opportunities. I should never have let that one no push me into the shadows. Step out into your light. Don't live in the shadows. I mentioned in a previous speech that as Black people, we are descendants of greatness. As Black women, we are a force to be reckoned with. We get things done. In my opinion, the word excellence exists because of the Black woman. Don't believe me? Just look at women around the world. We are fierce. Our ancestors endured a lot, but they also accomplished a lot. That's the ancestral fluid that flows through our veins. Tap into it. It's powerful. Black women throughout history have not been mediocre. Think about the status of women on the continent of Africa prior to the trail of numerous slave trades. Women were highly respected as mothers, as grandmothers, as queens throughout the continent. Our history as a whole started in Africa somewhere around 200,000 BCE, according to anthropologists. The family structure centered around grandmothers back then, as most Black families do today. All of that still embodies us. That foundation is what the Harriet Tubmans, the Fannie Lou Hamers, the Shirley Chisholms, the Mae Jemisons, the Dr. Rebecca Lee Crumplers, the Charlotte E. Rays, and the Angela Davises of the world tapped into. Collectively, these Black women were first in their fields and created paths and walkways for others, such as you, such as me. That's power, that's strength, that's the Black woman. Currently, we have the Oprah Winfreys of the world, the Rihannas of the world, the Sheila Johnsons of the world, and the Michelle Obamas of the world. As Black women, we have to do it all. And these women were not created by being mediocre. I often say mediocre mediocrity is the enemy of success. As Black women, that is what we embody. We are not mediocre. We do it all. Many people want the success, the fame, the fortune. Do you have the passion and the drive to do what it takes to achieve it? The answer is yes, you do. You do. You absolutely do. You have what it takes, but are you going to take that first step? Wishing doesn't get it done. Dreaming doesn't make things happen. Faith without action serves no purpose. Stop being your own dream killer. Step out into the light. Be seen. Be heard. Be fierce. It's Women's History Month. Go out and make some. It is impossible to know what could have been if you don't take that exit to Hustletown. You have got to put in the work because no one else can do it but you. Show up and show out. It's your dream. It's your vision. It's your time. Don't live in the shadows. So let's connect. Reach out to me via Instagram at gblynch_author. Or you can also find me on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok as well. I respond. Reach out to me. So if you want to book me for any kind of speaking engagement, or if you want updates on book signings that I have coming up, or book releases, just reach out. Be safe, everyone, and take care.
Hi everyone, my name is Gia Marseille. I'm an attorney in the Chicago area where I handle personal injury and DUI defense. Thank you so much for joining this segment during Women's History Month. Today, I want to share with you and discuss building your brand in a saturated market and how young entrepreneurs and attorneys can gain visibility when you think no one is watching. Now, I've been practicing law for over 10 years, and I am always thinking of creative ways to reach my target audience. I received the bulk of my legal training in Chicago working in government and the public sector. And 7 years ago, I decided to branch out on my own and open my law practice. This was, of course, after formulating my business plan to see if, in fact, will this business work for me? Is this the type of business I would like to run? And once the answer to that was yes, I then brainstormed on ways on how I would promote my business in a world that has an array of marketing tools, right? We have television, print, digital, billboards, social media, which has truly changed the game. So when I launched my firm, I decided to hit the ground running, and I leased a billboard that rotated throughout the city of Chicago. And mind you, I had 0 clients. I really had no money outside of the $10,000 my mother loaned me, but I kept that one billboard for a few years, and let me tell you, that billboard gave me so much credibility. That was by far one of the best marketing decisions I've made. I cannot tell you the number of times potential clients who are now repeat clients have shared with me how they were instantly moved to call my law firm immediately after seeing my billboard. My advertising slogan at that time was, "Don't sit still, call Attorney Hill," which was very fitting, I thought. A little corny, but fitting. However, my last name has since changed, and my slogan now is, "Don't delay, call Attorney Marseille." But The thing about it is, I put myself out there when the market was already saturated, and I had doubts at first and would get discouraged from time to time, but my marketing manager always stressed to me that people will call you when they need your services. I also remember seeing a quote on social media that read, "It doesn't matter how saturated this market is. If God called you to it, there is room for you." But it's up to us. It's up to you to make room for you. When I first started out, I had to ask myself weekly, sometimes daily, Gia, what are you doing to make room for your business in this competitive marketplace, this competitive market space, rather? And I had to focus on me and my business and not on what this attorney was doing or what this law firm was doing, but instead focus on what am I doing? And I realized that staying visible on social media while building my brand was key. It is key. And you stay visible not by thinking that you have to have thousands of followers right out of the gate in order to promote your brand, because the followers will come. So promote anyway. Let people know who you are and the services you provide anyway. All you need is content that you believe in, okay? But there is a catch. You must post and share your content without fear. So if you're waiting for that perfect time, that perfect message, that perfect script, that perfect logo, or even that perfect backdrop, if you are waiting for things to be perfect, you'll never do it. So you just have to do it. You must believe in the content that you produce and share it with the public as if you have 1 million followers, even if you only have one. So what this does, this will drive people to your business and brand, which ultimately lets people know who you are. And then people will have a chance to see your expertise, your confidence. And when you're confident, people will become confident in you. But they have to know you're out there first. A great business mind once said, if you don't invite people to your business, then how will they know to come? And so the time is now to start inviting people to your business and letting them know who you are and the services that you offer. So to all business owners, women business owners, minority business owners, entrepreneurs, and private attorneys, when I think about my business as it relates to Women's History Month and building a brand, I am reminded of where I started and how far I've come. As a 20-something-year-old who moved to the city of Chicago over a decade ago, I had no job, no furniture, no money. I drove 13 hours to the city from Louisiana with just me and my clothes. I can attest to the resilience of women in business, women in law, just women overall. And when it comes to business and brand marketing, I'm reminded of when I was a young television news reporter after graduating college. I worked in the broadcast industry, and a seasoned reporter said to me, he said, Gia, when you're on the scene to gather facts and interview people to articulately report on a story, there will be so many other reporters on the scene as well, who more than likely will have the same set of facts as you, the same press release. You all will oftentimes have access to the same people to interview for the news story. And he asked me, what's going to make your story different from their story? How will you stand out as a journalist? That's what he asked. And so I believe that same concept applies to attorneys, law firms, and other business owners. For me, I mostly handle DUI and personal injury cases, okay? But so do thousands of other attorneys, right? So the question then becomes, why me? Why should clients hire me? And that is where visibility, content, and brand marketing comes into play. As a woman-owned business, I say to all of you, keep building your brand, networking, and staying visible in your business. This way, when you're trying to secure that meeting or a seat at a very important table, instead of making a cold call, it becomes a warm call. And making that warm call is so much more rewarding and gratifying because you know what it took for you to get to that point to even make that call in the first place, right? As the old saying goes, it's not what you know, it's who you know. But some people have taken that phrase a step further and will say, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. And I will leave you all with that. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in, and happy Women's History Month.
Hi, I'm Kneeshe Parkinson. I am a St. Louis native of St. Louis, Missouri. Yes, the home of the 314, might I add. I have been working in the field of social determinants of health for more than 25 years. I am a life coach, a motivational speaker, an activist, content expert for several major entities in health disparities and pharmaceutical companies. I am part of the Black Women's Working Net Group, where we strive to support Black women in their social determinants of health, well-being, health, and physical leadership. Under the Black Women's Work Group, we build abstracts for major conferences for Black women to step into spaces and places and sit at the table to learn and be educated and be impacted with those marginalized communities such as women. We know that 98.5% or more women are marginalized, oppressed, and not provided equal opportunity of inclusions, such as in the workplace and many other spaces. Our dedication under those entities that I have mentioned in regards to my lived experiences as Kneeshe Parkinson. I afford the ability of my community for more than 25 years working in the health industry, where I've worked in social determinants of health, of social work, impacting families and women and youth, such as camps, toy drives, food pantry distribution, and many, many more. I also worked as a leader in my community for policy fellowships for changing laws and building law capacity at the state level, local level, international, and national level. I have lobbied the halls of Washington, D.C., where I bring my lived experience of more than 25 years of being a survivor of intimate partner and domestic violence and HIV. World-renowned leaders have called upon me based on my motivational interviewing skills, my motivational speaking skills, to lead the tenacity in the way for women. Amongst most women, women sit silent and they have stigma, they have isolation, and they have shame. So I use my storytelling on a keen, superb level to bring emphasis around women, not only just Black women, women of color. And when I say women of color, those are the women that are indigenous populations that have less opportunities for them to grow in their own educational key pieces. We bring the tools that they need and they desire to have to build the momentum and the sustainability for women and all women. Rise Impact is rejuvenating, influence, self-elevation on impact. And I am the proud founder and CEO of Rise Impact. And we strive to have sustainability for young people ages 13 through 24. We also strive to have our young adults, women, ages 25 to 45, come into our doors to making sure that sustainability happens for them. We also work with them on self-esteem issues, overcoming intimate partner domestic violence, and sexual health among those two objectives. Also, we make sure that our seniors are taken care of, our silver linings, right? Anyone, woman over the age of 50 can come into our doors to receive services and support, HIV and aging, older adult, food pantry, notary service, lived experiences from another senior living woman who can give her testimonial of walking through the world of seniors. Also, with Rise Impact, we are educating individuals to become Rise ambassadors in the community. And what a Rise ambassador embarks on is actually telling their stage-based storytelling about their I statements, knowing that I can live, I can rise to my full potential with Rise Impact. They come to the table to implement and disseminate programs such as Ryan's Blessing Bags, such as sexual health education, such as banking and administration work. Also, our phenomenal after-school program will help young kiddos have their literacy levels brought from 0 to excel. We will be working side by side with some of the school districts in our community here in St. Louis to edify and impact those students from pre-K to 12 years old. I want to just tell you, Rise Impact is on the move, and it is helping the community of St. Louis and nationally and internationally with our programs. In Uganda, we are working with the Rakai district of Uganda to help elevate the social determinants of health of more than 350 women in the villages of Rakai district. Our momentum is to take back the education and the tools and the commitment that we strive to under our memorandum of understanding to afford the Ugandan families of the Rakai district more sustainability. With that sustainability, they will be able to receive education on self-help, physical, mental, education on sexuality and identity and gender, and working with their families to improve the quality of life in the Rakai district of Uganda. Kneeshe Speaks Solutions is a phenomenal for-profit industry. It is a small business that is here, that has been curated in the St. Louis, Missouri area. And what we offer under the Kneeshe Speaks Solutions product is notary service, licensed life agents. We also offer Vivid, and we are brokers for Vivid security camera system. When I say Kneeshe Speaks Solutions is they talked about well hidden, kept secret, it is, yes. We also offer transportation services under Kneeshe Speaks and concierge services to anyone who indulge in making sure that they can get from the airport to their home or from their home to a train station. I want to just keep in mind and let you know that Kneeshe Speaks is the spoken word of solution. The well-being of women, right? Under Kneeshe Speaks, we continue to afford the mobility of motivational speaking to its highest level. Kneeshe Speaks has been in the world of speaking to large groups of 4,500 in Washington, D.C. in 2018, where this topic was in regards to catalyzing healthcare under the Health Resource Administration. We also had the opportunity to talk to legislators in Washington, D.C. about access to Medicaid, health disparities, and mental well-being for impoverished individuals and impoverished communities. Also with that, Kneeshe Speaks has also been able to change laws, activate, and show action in the community for people living with social determinants of health. As we know, through the unprecedented times of COVID-19 in 2020, our voices do matter. And with Kneeshe Speaks Solutions, we have been able to talk on the mainframe of social media, on the news, to talk about ways that we can change the way that we're living outside of a social determinants of health, such as COVID-19, because there were so many lives lost during COVID. We also help facilitate physical health, mental health wellness, to bring individuals into access and care and telehealth services, just to say the least. And with Kneeshe Speaks, we make sure that we show you what Kneeshe Speaks Solution is all about. we're dedicated to our young people and making sure that we give back to colleges and making sure we give back to individuals who have kiddos that may be going to sports arenas that may need an extra push, right? And what I mean by that, our dollars are donated to young kiddos to afford them the ability to stand up and rise to each piece of their lived experience, such as walking through high school, middle school, or elementary. I want to thank you all for giving me the opportunity today to pour into you, right? To pour into that physical, mental health, well-being, to be able to talk about and for you to learn who Kneeshe Speaks is, who Rise Impact is, and who Kneeshe Parkinson is. I want to say thank you again for your listening audience to be able to embrace and come into your home with full potential of Rise Impact and Kneeshe Speaks. You can follow me today for Kneeshe Speaks at Instagram. Yes, Kneeshe Speaks at Instagram. For Rise Impact on Instagram, you can go to Rise Impact Inc. And we look forward to you following us today. Thank you so much and be well until then.
Greetings, I'm Dr. Maxine Bryant. I am the sole proprietor of Bryant Educational Seminars and Training. We deliver the very best in training design and dynamics. Firstly, I'd like to thank Black Speakers Network for the opportunity to share my journey on this issue as we look into March, which is Women's History Month. Now, I started my company in 1998, and I've had great success over the years. I've traveled across the country speaking to audiences from California to Maine, from Jamaica, Ghana, Africa, and even in Egypt. But I've not always had that level of success. Let me back up. In 1989, Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw coined a term, intersectionality, to describe how race and gender overlap for Black females to create a dual bias, discrimination, and even volatile situations. Now, in its most basic meaning, the term provides a lens through which we can understand and even see the experiences of many Black women, where race and gender intersect in ways that have created invisible barriers. I wish that term had existed back in the 1970s when I was in high school, because perhaps it would have helped me to frame and understand what I was going through. All my life, I wanted to be a heart surgeon. I could visualize myself performing life-saving surgeries and operations on people. And so, when I got to high school, I decided to take chemistry and biology and health sciences to prepare me for my dream occupation. I was an average student. I got C's. And my mother recognized that I needed to have more than a C average in order to get into pre-med after high school. And now I was a first-generation student, college student. So my mother and father didn't have the skill sets or knowledge to really guide me. But my mother thought, well, her high school counselor would know how to help her. So she arranged an appointment, and I went with her. And together we sat down, and my high school counselor at the time was an older white gentleman. He looked at my transcript, and he said, Mrs. Taylor, do not waste your time or your money sending Maxine to college. She is not college material. Whoa. Wow. Well, he recommended that I take secretarial sciences in my senior year of high school, and that would prepare me for a good-paying job as a secretary. Well, I thought, well, he's got to know what he's talking about. So I decided I wasn't going to go to college, at least not for biology or to become a doctor or anything like that. My mother, on the other hand, had other ideas. She was determined that I was going to be the first in our family to graduate from college. Well, I went on and took secretarial sciences, and I excelled. I learned shorthand and typing and note-taking and all of that. And our last assignment was to conduct a research and write a research paper on a field of study we had no interest in. I thought about it and I said, I'm going to write on prison social workers, how being a social worker in a prison setting. That paper actually changed the trajectory of my life. Now, my mother wanted me to go to college, and I was going to go just to kind of please her and also to find a husband. That was my main goal in going to college. But in writing that paper, I realized that I kind of liked the idea of prison settings and working with prisoners. And to do social work in that setting, I needed to get a college degree. So I said, okay, I'm going to go to college in spite of what my high school counselor said. And guess what? My first quarter there, I made the honor roll. I had never made the honor roll in my life. What happened, actually, I took 4 classes. I dropped one that I was flunking. That left me with 3. I had an A, a B, and a C as a B average honor roll. But I thought if I could make the honor roll by fluke, what would happen if I put my mind to it? And that's exactly what I did. 4 years later, I graduated with a 3.0 and did what my high school counselor said I couldn't do. Now, looking back, I realized my high school counselor did what I call Polaroid cameraed me. You remember the Polaroid camera? Snap a picture of an individual or a thing, and the picture comes out, you pull off the front film, shake it, and voila, you have a picture. Now, you can't edit the picture. What you see is what you get. Now, we have cameras in our cell phones, and we take pictures, and we can edit right away. We can cut people out. We can change the background. Well, back then, we didn't have those editing abilities. And I think my high school counselor put me in a frame, a picture frame, and said, this is who she is. This is what she'll always be. No editing allowed. Has that ever happened to you? People put you in a frame, put you in a box. Well, I was determined, particularly after I made the honor roll, and I realized that I was capable. I was smart. I was intelligent. And I began to put messages in my head to replace those negative messages that said I wouldn't amount to anything, I wasn't going to be nothing, wasn't ever going to accomplish anything. And I gave myself positive, affirming messages. I did that as I kept going to school and I earned my master's degree. I did that as I started my public speaking business. I did that as I published 3 books. I continued to do that as I became a college professor and the director of 2 centers, the Center for Africana Studies and the Gullah Geechee Center. I determined that I was not going to allow myself to be limited or even defined by other people. I refused to be marginalized or minoritized or even minimized by systems that were designed to keep me down, bind me like footprints in cement. I intentionally arose and began to challenge the unjust systems in this government. I have survived and even thrived after divorces, after being wrongly fired from a job, after bankruptcy, and even after the untimely and sudden death of my 31-year-old daughter. You see, I have risen from the ashes of self-deflation, ego deprivation, and societal traumatization. I refuse to be refined within the limitations set on me by others and even by the ones that I set for myself. Yeah, I said it. We have those self-imposed limitations. Sometimes we can be our own worst enemies with messages of self-doubt, when we self-hate, when we compare ourselves to other people, when we are fearful of both success and failure. At one point, I had a personal trainer, and that person insisted that I engage in stretching exercises prior to our workout. One thing she wanted me to do was to arch. And that was arching my back all the way to stretch my muscles and posture me and get me prepared for the rigorous workshop we were getting ready to engage in. So I want to use that acronym ARCH to share a perspective with you. A, We need to acknowledge those internal and external limitations. What do they look like? Those are things, events, people, and words that demean, stifle, disempower. Acknowledge them. We need to re-envision ourselves, see ourselves as for the future. Because your right now is never your always. What's your future? Re-envision that. See, call out your strengths, articulate them, say them out loud. Those are your self messages. And heal. Be kind to yourself. Be graceful to yourself. Give yourself grace. You're going to make some mistakes. You're going to fall down. But that's not the end of the world. In closing, I want to share a story because I like to end with stories. Reverend Dr. Duck was preaching one Sunday morning, and he preached from Philippians. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And he told the ducks, we can fly, we can fly. I believe we can fly. I believe we can touch the sky. I think about it every night and day. We're going to flap our wings and fly away. And all the ducks were enthused, and they were excited about the message. And as they went home, they were talking among themselves. We can fly, we can fly, we can fly. As they walked home. You see, motivation and inspiration without activation is hallucination. I hope that this little talk has motivated and inspired you to action, and that you've just not heard it and let it fall on deaf ears and be a hallucinogen experience. Dr. Maxine Bryant, encouraging you to be the best you can be. Dare to stretch out, arch, acknowledge, re-envision, call out, and allow yourself to heal. Thank you. Have a good day.
Hi all, happy Women's History Month, and nice to meet you all. My name is Naomi Sangyumva. I am the founder of Speak Back to Life, where we win with words. And we do this by flipping chaos into calm with customized communication strategies. I do it as a crisis management life coach, a behavioral health coach, a author, a consultant, a minister, and a speaker. And today we are going to win with words. We're going to do this by going through a guide on not only how to regain clarity, but how to manage your storms and grow through what you go through. I mean, let's face it, life never goes how we planned it. I mean, think about the past 5 years. We all go through something, and life happens. Some storms we create ourselves, but there are some things that just show up. They happen involuntarily. And the issues and problems in life are not a matter of if, but when. And so we all go through storms, and some of us focus on surviving and don't properly analyze how to truly heal. And so today, while we're winning with words, we're going to take 4 words that are going to help us to be able to manage crisis. In my work of field, there's so many people that focus on preventative measures, and there's so many other people that focus on the solution-oriented healing methods. But today we're going to focus on something that many in my field don't talk about, and that's management. Because let's face it, some things you can't prepare for. You can't prevent it. You didn't know it was going to happen, COVID. And then there are other things that are not an easy fix, and you have to sit in it for a while. And so how do you still manage life and do life and maneuver through life and manage your storms. That's what we're going to talk about today. The first step, the first R, is to recognize that there is an issue. I've been blind all my life. Yep, I've been blind, and I can remember the first time getting glasses. It was in elementary school. I didn't know that I was blind until they gave me glasses. And when I put the glasses on, I was like, oh, this is what things are supposed to look like. All my life, I was going through life not knowing that I needed a clearer view. And oh, what an amazing time when the right word comes and gives you clarity for your situation. Or when you recognize that you need help in a situation. And there's a spectrum, right? There are those that are in a mess and I'm just in a mess. I need something. I'm in a mess. Then there are others that you've done the work, but there's still residue. There's still things that you need to work on to get to your next level, no matter where you are in the spectrum. The first step is to recognize where you're at. You can do that through study. You can do that through a trigger. You weren't looking for it. It just happened and you realized that you needed help. But the first step is recognize. The second R is release. Allow yourself to feel it, whatever it is. Allow yourself to feel the emotion. Are you angry? Are you disappointed? Are you shocked? What's going on? Maybe there's a mixture of emotions. At this point, you're not really trying to figure it out. You're just trying to allow yourself to feel the emotion. And most people in my field call what happens here as coping skills. And there's no bad or good coping skills, but there are healthy and unhealthy coping skills determining on what you're going through. And so at this point, maybe you just need to write it out, scream it out, punch it out, go to the gym, cry, sweat from your eyes if you're like me. You just need to find a way to release. And then after that, the third one is review. Now, this is where you examine your emotions, right? Because emotions are very good locators, but horrible leaders. And so at this point, this is where you go to your trusted community and your professionals. This is the one that you cannot do alone. So maybe your release was writing in journals. At this point, you're going to go into your journals and start locating what the issue is, figuring things out, figuring out what storm was caused by you and what part of the storm was involuntary. This is where you do the hard work. And the thing about emotions, all emotions are good. Now, let's take one example of an emotion that people think is bad, anger, right? Anger is beautiful. It shows you that you have been unjust. There's something that happened that was an injustice. Anger communicates injustice. And if it were not for anger, so many movements would not have happened. The women's movement, the Black rights movement, all of those things would not have happened if anger emotion was not there. So anger, when managed properly, will make things shift and happen. But that's why we want to be able to have the emotion locate us. When the emotion locates us, then we like, okay, there was an injustice that was made, and anger is a secondary emotion. So there's something else that you didn't deal with, right? Or something else that you need to deal with. So once that anger comes, you then locate yourself and figure out why am I feeling this? What's going on? What injustice happened? And then you figure out a healthy way to deal with that injustice. That's you locating. But when you're being led, that's when you go and bust people's windows out their cars. And It'll feel good temporarily, but it won't be good for you. And so you want to get into this place where you're reviewing what's going on. You're reviewing the situation. You're coming up with strategies to be able to deal with whatever it is that you're going through. You're holding yourself accountable and also holding the other people accountable, the other parties in the storm that might be your life right now. And then the last R is return, because remember, life still goes on. So after reviewing, you are going to return a better informed you, a better functioning whole you. That's it. That's the 4 R's. And if you utilize this process, you are going to be able to manage your storm, grow through what you're going through, and win with words. And in conclusion, I want to leave you all with this gift. If you click on this link, it will be able to take you to my new book, Taking Back Control, A Journey of Healing Me. And in this book, it's going to go through understanding your inner self, healing emotional trauma, mental healing, and holistic healing. And I am gifting this to you guys for free. And so go ahead and click on this link and enjoy. And I am so excited to see you win with words. You guys have a wonderful rest of your Women's History Month. And go love on your mamas, love on your sisters, love on your auntie and ems. And tell somebody today that you love them. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Norma Hollis, and I want to wish you a happy Women's History Month. I come to you as a former owner of a speaker bureau. As a matter of fact, I was the first Black woman to own a speaker bureau for Black speakers. I ran it from 1996 to 2010. And in those 14 years were extremely educational for me because, as speakers, we hold massive information. We share, we learn, we teach, we grow. And I want to share with you 3 wisdom perspectives in your journey that you can share. I left the industry in 2010. And since that time, I have been speaking a lot, but I've also developed a coaching company. I have a company now with a couple of subsidiaries, and we're doing a lot in the area of authenticity to help individuals and organizations connect with their true selves. When you look at life itself, it's really about being authentic. You can do your best in the world when you are authentic. So I have 3 wisdom tips for you to help you be wise in your decisions is how you move forward in life. I've been around probably longer than you and most of you that are the other speakers that are on this program. And so I have a different perspective. And I want to share with you how important it is that you look at life from a different perspective. We spend as humans about 80 years on the planet, but there's tens of thousands of years that have occurred before we got here. And assumingly, tens of thousands will occur after we leave. And those years that occurred before us helped the planet to become what it is today. And I know everywhere I go, I ask people if they're happy with society, and nobody's told me yes. We all want to see a change that'll be different. Well, as speakers, we have the opportunity to create that change, to impact others, to be a catalyst for that change. And I suggest that as you move forward in that way, that you look at the past, what has been, and what can be in the future. From my perspective, I remember in my younger years, in my teens and 20s, and how upset I was, and many others, about what we learned about the real truth about life. And after decades of being on that journey of making a difference and seeing that no matter how hard we tried, and no matter how many people were doing the same thing all over the world, it's very, very, very hard to impact what society has given to us. As a result, so many of us approach adult life, make all the money we can make. And it's really about making the impact you can make so that you can impact the people coming behind you and make a difference. When you follow your gifts and talents and you make your impact, the money will follow. Trust me, I know that's true. I've seen it happen over and over and over again, and it can happen for you too. So wisdom tip number 1 is focus on impact. Focus on what you can do, what your purpose is, and how you can make a change in the world. The world needs the change. The world needs your change. The world needs what you bring. So focus on what is it that you bring. Wisdom tip number 2, know yourself. Know who you are authentically. Know your gifts and talents. Let me refer you to Dr. Howard Gardner and his multiple gifts of intelligence theory. I suggest you look it up. When you do, look up Dr. Gardner's 9 multiple gifts of intelligence theory. Generally, they only publish 8 unless you ask for the 9th one. The 9th one is the existential. That's a gift that many people have. It wasn't well recognized a few decades ago, but many of you that are listening to this right now are very existential. If you were born in the 70s, 80s, 90s, the teens, any of you, the younger you are, the more existential you probably are. And these are people who have a connection with what I call the wooey, the other side of the world, not the world that society says you should be and focus on money, but the world that says that the money will come if you live in your gifts and talents. Dr. Howard Gardner will help you understand what the 9 multiple gifts of intelligence are. I call them wisdom gifts because it's really the seat of your wisdom. I know for me, I had to make an adjustment because when I owned my bureau, when I started it, I didn't realize that bureau work was marketing work. It was getting out there and selling your speakers every single day. And actually, I'm a trainer, I'm a coach, I'm a personal development person. I didn't realize I was in the wrong part. I was in the right industry, but the wrong position. So look at yourself, know yourself enough to know where you fit, what it is you're to do, what your purpose is, what your authenticity is, and what's the best way to express it. And that's knowing your gifts and talents. And so number 3 wisdom gift is to use your gifts and talents in your profession. Use what your top 3 are. Once you look at Dr. Howard Gardner's list, look through them and see if you can identify what your top 3 gifts are. Some people only have 1 top gift. That actually makes life very easy because they know to go around this one path. For those of you that have multiple gifts, and many speakers do, you've got verbal linguistic, you probably may have bodily kinesthetic, you might also be intrapersonal or maybe interpersonal. Look them up, you'll see what the difference is. But use them in the work that you do day to day. That's how you'll be happiest. That's how you make the most impact. That's how you will connect with who you are from the inside and what you do on the outside. That's how you can use your wisdom to make sure that you ensure your future. Because when you look at the continuum of life and where life is going, we're going to artificial intelligence, which means that the brain is not going to be used as much in the future as it has been in the past. There are some researchers that tell you that we've exhausted the brain at this time. And the future is all about creativity. What are you creating? What can you create? How is your creation going to make a difference in the world? Stick with that. Stick with your gifts and talents. Let them lead you to the change and the impact you can make on the planet, to the purpose that you came here for, and embrace it and make it happen. Only you know what it is. Only you can do it. If you want some guidance in that area, I'm happy to provide guidance for you. I have a free event every Tuesday at 5 o'clock Pacific time. It's called Authentic Life Networking Circles. I have multiple speakers, a different one every week, and we talk about the 9 dimensions of authenticity that you see behind me. You'll learn a little bit more about yourself. We give you some thought-provoking questions to examine about yourself. And you leave inspired, and you leave a little more knowledgeable about the deeper side of who you are and the deeper side of what you can do to impact the world. I encourage you, impact the world with your gifts and talents. Make the world a different place. We can do it if we do it together and if we all stay aligned with the gifts and talents that we were given by our Creator. I'm Norma Hollis. You can check me out, normahollis.com. And please sign up for Authentic Life Networking Circles by going to giftfromnorma.com. I look forward to meeting you, and let me know that you were on Black Speakers Network program, and I'll be happy to connect with you. I'm looking forward to it. Enjoy the month. Make your contribution. Do you, and do it well.
Hello, hello, hello. My name is Shayla Atkins, and I am so excited to be here with you today. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. So, I am the CEO and founder of the Atkins Impact Consulting Firm. We are a global DE&I coaching and consulting firm who helps purpose-driven businesses and organizations advance their racial and gender equity. But near and dear to my heart, I'm the creator of our signature leadership and professional development program for women of color called Women Lead with Spice. And that's what I want to talk to you about, women who lead with spice. Spice are those 5 critical skills that I believe women of color should master in order to show up and lead with authenticity and effectiveness without damaging your credibility or your brand. So just to get started, I have a question for you. This is for my leaders, and I hope everyone watching this is raising their hand. For my leaders, have you ever asked your employees to show up and give their unwavering loyalty and contribution, give 100%, but yet they can only bring a fraction of themselves to the workplace? And you may go, well, Shayla, of course not. I need my employees and my team and the women in my organization to bring their full authentic selves to work so that they can contribute and innovate. And so we can accomplish our business objectives and goals. That answer and that question may seem like common sense, but it's not reality for most women in the workplace. In fact, it has been studied and reported that women in the workplace suppress up to 65% of themselves on a daily basis. And for women of color, it's even more astonishing. Up to 90% on a daily basis. So yet I ask you again, ladies and leaders, are you coming to work looking and expecting to contribute 100% of who you are to that mission, to that vision, and yet only 10% of you shows up? And this is why I say it is time to lead with spice. And spice is about ditching that conforming and code-switching in order to blend in and conform to those societal and workplace cultural norms. But ladies, before we lead with spice, there's one important thing we have to do, and that's strip. No, not that kind. This is the stripping and removal of those coveted titles and labels that we've given ourselves so that we can get to know who we are and love who we are at the core. And this is the work that I've had to do and a number of my clients have done. I had to get rid of mom, wife, spouse, consultant, CEO, prior corporate leader, and get to know Shayla under the core. Because although all those titles and those degrees and certifications are meaningful, we've earned it. Those are just the icing on the cake. They're not our identity. They aren't who we are at the core. That adds to the secret sauce, but the secret sauce is you. That's what makes you unique. And so for me, I spent 10 years hiding, denying, and suppressing who I was at the core because I wanted to hide my adversities, hide the fact that I didn't come from the fancy alma mater. But what I had to do was rewrite and change my narrative. When I'm restricted, removed, I was able to embrace my adversities as my unique competitive advantage. Instead, I became that resilient problem solver who can take on any challenge who faces her. So once you have that solid foundation and you love who you are, it is time to lead with spice. So one thing about spice and to know about me is I love acronyms. So let's get into it. So to start with that S is your savvy. That's right, your business savvy. As a leader, your subject matter expertise no longer becomes about the tactical and technical skills that you can deliver. It is about your business savvy. That's exactly what sets you apart from the talented bunch, right? When you are business savvy and you can know exactly how it is that you contribute to the bottom line, you know exactly how your company and your organization makes money, and you start to move a little different, which leads me into the P, which is performance. Now, there is no secret. Women, we get things done. We have no problem in this area of performing, but oftentimes we overperform. We overcompensate to the point of burnout and exhaustion. And performance, this is really about performing productively, performing intentionally. So now that you know exactly how your company makes money and the external market risk and the competition and the threats that the organization face, you start to perform productively. The next roles that you take on directly contribute to their bottom line, even if they're outside of your comfort zone or your subject matter expertise. Because remember, this is about leadership, right? And when you perform productively, before you take on those extra tasks, those task-driven tasks, you start to say, you know what? I want the ones that is going to contribute to the bottom line. And then you can move into your I, which is your rebuild phase, and build that image of authenticity. It is rooted in you, and not just the physical image. It is about your belief system, your values. And when you have an authentic image, you say that who I am and who you are is non-negotiable. It cannot be bought. And you show up as who you are, authentic, with boundaries. And once you have that authentic image, and now you can move into the C, which is your communication. And guess what? You are now a communicating diva. Why? Because you know exactly how your company and your organization makes money. You perform productively instead of being task-driven. You now have an image of authenticity. You are rocking your coils, your braids, your bright colors, and now you can clearly articulate the value that you deliver. Not those tasks that you do, but the value that you create for the organization. You can communicate at a senior level. You are clear about your ask and what it is that you need and what will happen if you do not get your ask. So I get it. I was that person. I raised my hand. Prior to, I was that person who wrote out those long, ineffective thesis statements in my performance reviews. You knew exactly how busy I was. But what I didn't share was whether or not I accomplished the goal. And so when you're communicating with spice, you're very clear, you're very concise. And again, you communicate the value that you articulate and the value that you deliver. When you show up in a job interview, you know exactly why employers should have hired you, and you're not worried about being too arrogant. You're being confident. And now that you're communicating, you move into the E, which is exposure. You're exposing yourself to new people and to new opportunities. You're building your personal board of directors, your mentors, your coaches, your sponsors, and your champions. No more solo leadership. We are not here to do this alone. You are not here to climb and fight this fight alone. Being authentic in the workplace will come with its own set of challenges, but you cannot and should not face that alone. That's why the exposure is so important. And when you have someone who knows you, not the employee, but the real you, you have people in your corner who are willing to put the corporate currency on the line for the sake of you. the people who are willing to sit you at the $1 million round table to sign that next contract. So again, I ask you, are you ready to lead with spice? Are you ready to be that business savvy beast that you are in your own right? Are you ready to perform productively and hang up that superwoman cape? Rebuild your image and your personal brand that is authentic and oozes who you are at the core. You can start to communicate clearly and concisely of the value it is that you deliver, and you expose yourself to new people and new opportunities. So, ladies, it is time to spice it up, be authentic and effective in the workplace to land your next level leadership role without sacrificing your identity or your sanity. So again, my name is Shayla Atkins. Thank you so much for your time. I can be found on social media platforms at Coach Shayla Speaks on Instagram. I am on LinkedIn under Shayla Atkins. Facebook is Coach Shayla Speaks 2.0. And my website is www.theatkinsimpact.com. Again, that's www.theatkinsimpact.com. All right, now let's spice it up. Have an amazing day.
Hi, my name is Saida Eccles, and I am an ordained minister and a leadership educator. My background is in international teaching as well as being a college and university chaplain, a hospital chaplain, and I most recently have done work in higher ed to teach and educate on DEI. I have a Master's of Divinity and a Master's of Education. I love using both of those to help train and prepare leaders to set an example in the industry that they are in. On today's journey, I want to talk with you about the Apostle Paul's commission to Timothy, the up-and-coming leader, and how he could set an example for believers. Today, I want you to leave from our time together knowing that you, whether you have the actual title of leader or you are someone who just has influence in your area, I want to teach you how to utilize that and use that so that you can have a biblically rooted and founded leadership style that sets an example and creates the culture and climate that you want. So let's start. I've been leading since I was in kindergarten. Believe it or not, my first job ever was as the welcome buddy for new students to our school. My teacher would ask me to help greet them and show them and acclimate them to our classroom. And sometimes we would have international students or students who just transferred schools. From there, by the time I was in third grade, I was reading the lunch menu on our local news station. In high school and in college, I was the captain of my basketball team. And in grad school, I was the president for 3 years of this Truett Black Seminarians Association. These leadership positions, in addition to my 10 plus years in education and ministry, have really helped me see the importance of developing leaders who know and want to set an example in the workplace. And so, because it's Women's History Month, think of this time as an opportunity to walk into your sister's closet. And everything, even the things with tags on it, are up for grabs. Take what you need from here, and please feel free to share this with others you know who may be struggling or have a desire to help tighten and straighten out their leadership style in a way that culture doesn't just happen, but it's the culture that they want created. In 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 12, it reads, "Do not let them look down on you because you are young, but set an example for believers in speech, in conduct, in faith, in love, and in purity." And so we're going to break apart these different ways that Paul has called Timothy to set an example. He first starts off with what he does not need to do before he moves into what he does need to do. And what he does not need to do is let the thoughts and opinions of other people about him shape who he thinks he is himself. When it says don't let anyone look down on you, the reality is we can't control what other people say. If you've ever been in a social media comment section, you know you have absolutely no control over what people might comment. But what you do have control over is what you think of yourself. When other people have thoughts that belittle you, that doubt you, that may question your capabilities and leadership style, don't take that on to yourself. So that don't let anyone include you. Think of yourself as gifted, as talented, as having influence, whether you have the title or not. Moving on, think about the ways in which you have been heard, the things that you say, your speech. When Paul tells Timothy, don't let anyone look down on you because you are young, but set an example to believers in speech. The believers were the group of people that Timothy was over. I'm curious, who are the people that you were over or who are in your circle? And what do they hear you saying? When it comes to speech, we know actually it's not just sticks and stones that can break our bones, but words really can hurt. So what things and what comments, what language is normalized in your environment? Is it jokes and sarcasm? Is it belittling of other people? I know it's common for leaders such as Coach K to lash out, be angry, and yell. And then everyone else is just expected to adopt and accept that leadership style. But what if encouragement and kindness, patience, and affirmations were a part of your culture? When that is your language, it affects the culture. And so think about, how can you set an example in speech, whether you're doing it or how can you take it to the next level? Think about what you want to hear heard in your environment and begin modeling that. The next thing that Paul calls Timothy to do is set an example in conduct. The way we act really can communicate so much to others. For example, when mistakes are made in your organization, do people own up to them, or are you still trying to figure out who spilled all the coffee in the coffee room? See, the thing is, when there is a fear of making mistakes, then there is a lack of ownership and accountability. When we start to normalize learning and grace in our environment, that type of conduct then extends from leadership down to others. It's important for us to be mindful how we act and what people see us doing. Is showing up late normal for your organization, or do people know this meeting starts on time, so please be in your seats early? When it comes to conduct, do people see welcome spirits for a welcoming environment for any and everyone, or just for those in leadership or those with power? Again, whatever we're modeling will be repeated. And so make sure that whatever you want repeated is what you're choosing to model. The third thing that Paul tells Timothy is to set an example in faith. The reality is, for those of us who hold fast to Christian principles, we're not always going to see and feel the promises of God, but we know that the promises of God are truth. And so when it comes to having faith, we have to hold fast to knowing who God is despite our circumstances. Sometimes businesses and sometimes building relationships don't always look or manifest in the way that we thought by this certain time. But when we know and hold fast to who God is, then we know that we can trust God to be working things out for our good and for his glory. And so I would encourage you to keep the faith and keep hope alive. But most of all, make sure that you're modeling a space and you're creating a space where people don't have to leave their core beliefs and their motivations at the door. The next thing that Paul tells Timothy to set an example in is in love. And there's a scripture that says, love one another as I have loved you. That's deep, because God's love for us is so rich. In Ephesians, it says that Paul prays for his friends that they would come to know the height and the width and the breadth and the depth of God's love. because it is vast and it's unconditional. Now, I'm not saying go out every week and buy everyone in your office or your environment roses and chocolates, because honestly, those are acts that demonstrate love. But love is a full acceptance of people, their insecurities, what they know, what they don't know, their mistakes, their goals, their dreams. I pray that we would all be leaders who know how to train up people with their different giftings, and that we help invest in them, who they are and who they want to become. The last way that Paul calls Timothy to set an example is in purity. When it comes to purity in the business world, it is so important that our business dealings and the decisions that we make are good and honorable. When it comes to money and moral failures, we've seen time and time again how too much power and little oversight and little accountability can allow people to make grave mistakes. But we also know it's possible for people who are in charge of finances and who are having interpersonal relationships in the office to also do it well. We know what it looks like to steward our power and our influence well. And so if you want an environment where business happens honestly, and whatever habits and whatever infrastructures you currently have, if those are things that you know that when your business grows, that in purity of heart, those things can grow as well, then you're doing it right. Let your heart and let your motives be pure, because it is so important for leaders to set an example in a way that encourages others to do things well. I hope that this glimpse at Paul's letter to Timothy will help you start to plan out and think through how you can intentionally set an example in your organization so that you have a culture that honors one another and models godliness and holiness. If you would like to learn more about me or about my leadership coaching style, please visit my website. Thank you for joining me today.
Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be a part of the Black Speakers Network Women History Speaker Series, and my topic is on establishing boundaries to transform your business. But first, I am Taylor Preche. I'm a registered mental health counselor intern in the state of Florida, founder of and lead therapist of A Change Within LLC, where I provide individual therapy services to those who are seeking identity development and understanding their relationships to others. I also develop mental health workshops for the local community and organizations to teach about mental health topics, and I design and create mental health resources and apparel, and I'm podcast host of Therapy Talks with Taylor. So let's dive in. Our objectives of this talk is to understand what is mental health, how does it relate to business, and how to set 3 boundaries in terms of our mental health and business. So mental health, in terms of the United States, 1 in 5 U.S. adults live with a mental health illness. So it affects everyone. It doesn't matter what age you are, what social economic status you are. Mental health encompasses us all. It includes our emotional, psychological, and social health. Our mental health affects how we think, feel, act, interact with others, determines how we respond to our environment. And it occurs at every stage of life, from infancy all the way to elderly years and everything in between. So mental health is everywhere. And we already know we're talking more about it in terms of the general public, but let's dive deeper into what it is. So basic signs and symptoms that one may be struggling with their mental health is not the best, or we're off baseline, is when we have changes in our sleeping or eating habits. We are starting to withdraw with others. We are a little bit more cynical or a little bit more apathetic. We have changes in our moods, or we dabble in substance use. We have strained relationships with those around us, thoughts of self-harm or harm to others, and reduction in our daily task performance. So these are signs and symptoms generally based across the board when we might notice, whether within ourselves or others, that their mental health may be on a decline or off their normal baseline. And so some factors that contribute to our baseline of mental health. These are four main areas. Of course, there's many others, but this is just a synopsis. First things first, genetic. Some mental health conditions are genetically predisposed, like anxiety, depression, some personality disorders. There is a little bit of a genetic link. Again, we're still in the infancy of learning that out. Life experiences. So if there's a particular life event that has happened in our timeline that will impact our mental health later on. So another factor is family history, whether it is looking at the whole type of your parental or maternal side, looking at the different genetic predispositions and their behavioral moods can show a correlation to the individual self. So another factor is our environment, the area we grew up in or currently live in, our work environment as well can contribute to our mental health. So that was a little bit about mental health in general. And so now we're transitioning into how mental health relates to business. And you're either listening as an entrepreneur, professional, and wonder like, okay, I know about mental health in terms of myself, but how does that relate to my business? So when we're thinking about mental health, we can apply it to our business or entrepreneurship or the professional workplace in these several ways. One, we can understand the connection we have with others. So as a business owner or entrepreneur or professional, you are interacting with other people in your life. And so understanding how their emotions play into it, how you can better communicate your needs and your aspects in terms of business and what you want to do, it be able to transfer over in terms to others that you have contracts with or partnerships or investors. And so understanding your connection with other people, critical. Also, it allows us our employees to be seen. So for example, if we're focusing on the mental health of our employees or those that we work with or have work for us, they get to have an invested interest in the business and in the company, and they become more productive employees. They have more, buy-in to stay long-term, especially the engagement. So again, if you as a business owner or a company owner or just a professional staffer has an invested interest into your employees' well-being and understand their emotional well-being, their mental well-being, and psychological well-being, they have more engagement in what they're doing at work. They're more willing to show up and do the extra mile in terms of their jobs if we as the professionals and owners and staffing agencies really invest in them. And also it shifts the company culture. So often we have experienced, myself included, working in a company environment where it is very toxic in terms of always putting in your sacrifices, but not getting anything in return, or being demanded to work more than a fair share of hours per week and you sacrifice family time. So if we weave into these principles of taking care of mental health, not only from the top level down, but in aspects of the company culture, it starts to shift the nature of that well-being so that we can work efficiently and smarter instead of harder. And also mental health in terms of our business can help grow our brand. Mental health is a hot topic right now. Everyone is trying to incorporate more areas in terms of their life or in terms of their connections with others for mental health. So as a company or as a brand, if you are on the forefront of this, you'll have more traction and more longevity in this growing industry. All right, setting boundaries in 3 steps. Step 1, determine boundary. Step 2, communicate that boundary. Step 3, enforce the boundary. So let's break that down. Step 1, we want to determine what boundary need to put in place to not only protect ourselves and how we interact with business in terms of entrepreneurship, ownership, work professional, all aspects. So what do you need to do to protect your energy? And that's some self-reflection. So I always encourage my clients to do a journal. So journal out your thoughts, journal out how you're feeling. What did you like when you had your interactions with other people, whether it's investors, contract workers, vendors, clienteles that you serve, or demographics that you serve? Like what worked well and what doesn't work well? Step 2, communicate your boundary. And so it's important that once you have determined, you've listed out on your, wrote it down in your journal, you listed out your boundaries, like 3 to 4, like, okay, here's my boundaries. Now it's time to communicate that. And if it's a boundary for yourself and how you interact with others, that could be a one-on-one conversation. It's important to be clear and concise, using I statements and keeping your tone of voice, open, non-judgmental for the other person or people to receive it. You could also communicate that if you're setting a new boundary in terms of work or in the company or the organization you serve in, having like a team meeting to say, hey, here are some boundaries that I'm working to incorporate in our work culture so that everyone is, protecting their energy and mental health, but also that we're working more efficiently. And so everyone's really good at the first 2, determining what our boundary is and communicating that outwardly. However, it's the enforcement of this boundary that is the most critical and most difficult, that, at least for my clients, they struggle the most with, because you have to determine the consequences for those who violate your boundaries. You have to understand what are the non-negotiables, what are the complete, like, I'm not backing down on this boundary because it's very important to me, and remaining consistent. So those are 3 simple steps on how to set boundaries, not only in terms for yourself and your mental health, but also in terms of the business or the work environment that you serve in. First, determine your boundary. Second, communicate that boundary. And third, enforce it. So thank you all for, joining in and listening. It is so important to care about your mental health and the mental health of those around you, especially if you're in the business sector, the employees you serve, because if anything is off baseline, it can have a direct impact on the success of not only your endeavors at work, but also in your business.
Wow, what amazing speakers we've heard from today. Some of them, I'm sure, have overcome a fear of public speaking. They have worked on delivery, and they took the time to dig deep to bring you a message that was designed to inspire and empower. And that is something to celebrate. In that spirit, please share in the comments below your gratitude. Also share nuggets that resonated with you or takeaways that you can and will apply to your own life. As we close out, I want to encourage you to watch the entire series, airing right here on YouTube throughout the month of March. The full series will be available at blackspeakersnetwork.com/events/WHM23. Please see the link in the comments below. If you work for an organization that is seeking their next speaker, or if you're a speaker looking for your next stage, please use the links below to connect with Black Speakers Network. And if you are a speaker who wants to amplify your voice, increase your visibility, and needs to obtain additional training, I highly recommend becoming a BSN member. Join today by visiting Black Speakers Network /join. Finally, thank you. Thank you for joining us. I hope you have been inspired and gained valuable insights from our speakers. My name is Dr. Johnette Ruffner-Caesar, founder and CEO of Liberated Expressions. It has been a pleasure to serve as your host. To close, I want to share what we always say at BSN. Speak up. Your audience is waiting. Thank you.